Coming up next on Hands on Windows, we're going to look at Microsoft Paint. No, really. I love it. You will too.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hands on Windows. I feel like this entire show has been building to this moment. This might be my favorite app that's built into Windows. It's the one I use maybe the most of the apps that are built in Windows. It's certainly one of the oldest apps in Windows that I've been using the longest. The other one would be Notepad, dating back almost literally, I think, to the first version of Windows, although it had a slightly different name back then. But I am, of course, referring to Microsoft Paint. An app that doesn't get a lot of respect. I think that's true of a lot of apps that are built into Windows, especially Windows 11. But I've always used it. I've always used it a lot. It went through a rough period when Windows 11 came out. Microsoft started screwing with it again for some reason. They made a lot of mistakes. It took a couple of years, but they got it back, and it's actually better than it's ever been. So what I wanted to do was go through the way that I use it, because like I said, I use it every single day for work. I also use it once a year to create my family's Christmas card, which I know sounds insane, but I'll show you how I do that. I do use Photoshop Elements, Paint.net, the GIMP, Affinity Photo. Actually, I've been using a lot lately. Everything in between, apps that have come and gone that we don't remember the names of anymore. But I keep coming back to Paint. It's just something that kind of satisfies a need and works well. And that's especially true today. And I bet a lot of you don't know that. So let's take a look. So Microsoft Paint. I made this dark, so it's not blasting in the face with light, but sort of a fake ribbon interface now, but a lot more going on. There's a lot more functionality here than there ever was before. We've talked about things like the remove background feature, which uses AI and is actually pretty good. The image creation functionality, which is pretty good. If you have a Copilot Plus PC, you'll also have a co-creator feature, which is, hit or miss. But like I said, I've been using it for a long time. I do use other tools, of course, and in some ways, some of them, Photoshop or Affinity can be more efficient in some ways. But if I had a brand new computer and I had to rush out the door and I didn't have a chance to install any apps, but I still had to get work done, I could absolutely use Paint for my day-to-day needs. And so, as an example, let's say I'm writing an article, Microsoft announced something, there's some graphical asset that's attached to it. I'm going to pretend it's this thing here. I download that and I have to put it on my website, right? And so when I do that, I have to resize it, but I also have to change the aspect ratio usually. I mean, sometimes it'll be the right aspect ratio. We use a 16:9 aspect ratio. You would think there was some kind of computer science that would just handle this for me on the fly, but I'm told I have to do this, so I have to crop that way. You can see only part of this image because it's humongous. And so the first thing I would do is resize this. The images on my site are typically 1066 by 600. That's a 16:9 aspect ratio, obviously. Paint has this tool, which has been updated in the past couple of years to support pixel resizing. It used to just be percentage. I typically launch this keyboard shortcuts. I'm a keyboard guy. So Control W is how I get to this one. I would also do Shift Tab to go back, space to select, and then type in that 1066 number, right? Just to get this thing down to a meaningful size. Now, as far as cropping in certain aspect ratios, that's actually one thing they don't do very well in Paint. And so for something like this, I would actually just do something along these lines where hit Control E to bring up image properties, and then start resizing from here. So it's actually technically it's 1066 by 800 is what that said. So I might cut off top. I might go a little deeper there actually because it's a lot of sky, and then reverse this again and just cut the rest off the bottom. Get to 1066 by 600. So there's your image. This is something that my website would be really good with. And I can kind of go from there. I often too, for the image that goes above the story, I might leave it in the original aspect ratio, depending on what it is, save that as one file, and then do that cropping, get to the 16:9, and then save as, right? This is where the keyboard shortcut thing kind of fails me. Alt F will get me to here, but I can't, there's no save as option. And part of the reason is that they support all these multiple file formats, which actually is really good because in the old days, well, it was bitmap originally, and then they went to PNG, a PNG format. But now you can save in whatever, and so I typically save to the desktop, and I would rename it from here or whatever. But that's all I need. I don't have to engage a third party app, right? So for the day to day work stuff, this is great. It's absolutely fine. But like I said, I use this thing to create my Christmas card. And I know that sounds, every time I say that, I almost, people usually like I'm insane. So this is what my Christmas card looks like. This is the one from a couple years ago, 2022. It's a grid. And I try to be a little creative with it. You can see like one image spread across this squeeze, 3 squares at the bottom. This is an L-shaped one. That's actually fairly rare for me. A vertical stack of 2, a lot of 1s. I try to get, obviously we want pictures of the kids and me and the wife and whatever's going on in our lives. And then this is the one from last year, similar. There's no images with that are 3 squares, but a bunch of 2s, vertical, horizontal. This is a first down here. I actually did like a bleed through kind of like between the 2 squares. So I guess I'm getting experimental or whatever, but this is kind of the effect I'm shooting for, right? And I've literally been making this, like I said, in Paint every year, and I created this template that I use, and so I'll open this in Paint, and this is kind of the base. This is and let me just scroll that down so you can see all of it. Actually, you could use this button right here. We'll do it automatically. This could be transparent. Paint does support that, but I want the solid white because that's going to factor into how I edit this. And the way I do this is I go through the photos from the year with my wife. We pick out our favorite pictures, and you can only fit so many pictures, obviously. So I'll kind of sketch it out a little bit and come up with ideas. And this is the background. And then I'm going to fill this thing in at the year, and we're done. So I just have a few images here. So I have this like headshot of me is kind of a good one because it's not the right shape. These things are square. But if I open that in Paint, again, humongous. Just like my actual head. So that makes sense. If you select this thing, you can kind of see it roughly how big it is. It's actually 342 or something, 340 by 340, let's call it, but 350 by 350 is kind of what we're shooting for. So when I resize this image, Control W with Pixel, I'm going to go to the vertical because it's bigger horizontally, right? So I'll just select 350 roughly, and you get kind of an idea for that thing. So what I want to do is I'm going to pretend I want it to be in that square. So I've sketched this thing out. I want the picture of me to be up there for whatever reason. I select that thing, and now I'm going to paste it here. Now, if I just paste it now, it's just pasted over my face. But what you can do is use that orange color in the square as the background color, and then enable transparency, and then you get that transparency effect, right? So, this is just a rough edit thing. It's no big deal, but I'm going to go in and just kind of crop this to the outside of the square. It doesn't have to be perfect actually, but I can go inside of this because the rest of it's going to be there in the background. And I Control X that, but Control C it. Now I could just paste it, but in fact, that was the only way I could do it in the past. But actually, Paint supports layers now. So when I turn on layers, you have this background layer, and I can add a layer. And what I'll do is paste it into that layer. And the reason is, as I go through this image, many years, I'm 70, 80% of the way through, and it's not quite right. I want to move things around. And by using these layers, you can hide and show the layers, and then you can make a copy and put them in new locations. And there's been many years where I've had 2 versions, and I can show my wife both of them, and she says, okay, this one looks better, or maybe move this around, whatever it might be, right? So I'm going to paste that headshot thing into this document, except that before I do that, I'm going to zoom in so I can actually see it. I'm using the keyboard and the mouse here. I'm sorry, you can't actually see that, but hold down the Control key, mouse wheel. You could use these controls down here. There's also a control that appears over here for zoom, but this is pretty good. You can see it's pretty big. And then I just, move in there. That's probably correct like that. So, there's one image, easy. So doing this for images where you might be filling 2, 3, 4 squares, whatever it might be, just similar. I'll just make this simple because, you don't have to sit here and watch me make this is not the actual Christmas card. I mean, who cares? But select this area down here. You can see it's roughly 10. It's actually closer to 1050, but we'll call it 1060 by 350, right? We know it's already 350 is the height. So I can open this image in Paint. And this is just a random photo. It's not a particularly good picture necessarily, but it's something I grabbed. Same thing, Control W. I said 1060. Did I say 1060? 1060, something like that. And then we can paste, got the wrong one. I'm sorry. To the Control. The Control C for copy, get the new layer ready, and then go back. And then I will paste it over here, except I just made a mistake because I selected the new layer. I have to select the layer that thing is in. So I'll do that again. You can tell I use this thing a lot. I knew exactly what happened. Do that one more time. All right, so now when I paste it in, same effect. Change the background to the orange. Change it to transparent selection. And then I can just kind of, move this thing around where I think, I don't know, somewhere in there, or actually maybe something like that. It's kind of random. Same as before. Normally I would zoom in a little bit. I obviously for something like the Christmas card, I'd be a little more careful, but I'll just do like a rough edit here and then, see what the actual size of this thing is. So 1051 by 340, 1051 by, what did I say, 340? Right. Copy and make sure you select the right layer. Zoom in. I always do the wrong zoom the first time. And just get it up in that corner so that it matches up. It's easy when you zoom in just to kind of match it exactly. And then you can zoom out and see what it looks like. So, again, I'll just before I do that, let me make another, let's say later on, I think, well, actually I don't think I want it there. I want this to be somewhere else. So I could do this again. I'll just rough it in because there's no point in really worrying about it too much, but that's probably roughly maybe somewhere like that. So now I have it in two different places. So I can go down here and hide that layer. Now I could save as and get a version of this that has it over here, or I could come here and go back to the original version, right? That's kind of the neat thing about the layers. So the past, I guess last year might've been the first one. Now when I do this, I do it this way specifically to make it easy to move these things around. So this stuff, the transparency, which has been in Paint for a while, actually, the resize and skew with pixels, awesome. I don't even know how you find image properties. Honestly, I only use that from the keyboard, but the Control E ability to that would crop it, but the ability to do that, it's been there for a long time. Layer support, fairly new. These are features that I think a lot of people would think you would need, something that was more expensive than zero, right? This is something that's just built in to Windows. And I think we might be on the 18th year that I've used Paint for this. I mean, it's been a long time. The kids were little babies when we first started doing this. So it's interesting seeing that it's gotten better over time as well. Paint isn't the only app in Windows that I use to this degree. I use Notepad every day as well. And as Microsoft has improved Notepad, they never ruined it. At least they had went through a rough patch, like I said, with Paint, but they've actually always done a great job with Notepad. And I have a similar relationship with that app. And so maybe in a future episode we'll talk about that. Anyway, I hope you found this useful. I hope you respect Paint a little bit more. I suspect you don't right now, but there's some good stuff going on in here. And we'll have a new episode of Hands on Windows every Thursday. You can find out more at twit.tv/HOW. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you especially to our Club Twit members. We love you. I'll see you next week.